Hi, guys and gals. I hope everyone can hear me and probably see me as of now. Just to confirm that everything's set up and we are here. Yep, here we go. Checking out if the voice is working properly and you could actually hear me, you could actually see me. Would you please confirm that it works? So no issues with the connection, everything goes fine. From time to time, of course, I would be looking at the chat just to check out that everything works. And of course, we would go through the slides. Yes, here you go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadian Immigration Channel Live. I'm extremely excited to be here today because you've no idea how long we were going through this route and through this road to actually set up these webinars. It's absolutely separate to a story how we were testing out various products, they were discontinued, how YouTube decided to close some of its functionality, and so on. So we are finally here. Today, it's not just a launch or rather relaunch date for us, it's also a testing date where we would be running on a separate software and looking how it works live with a number of people, with a number of viewers and listeners. And of course, it's an exciting opportunity to sort of, build this bridge of connection between you and us, answer your questions while we're conducting this webinar. If some of you remember, I'm pretty sure that there are just a handful of those who are with us from the date this channel was created. It all started with these webinars, right? They were completely different. Technology was different at that time, but all in all, it all started with these webinars where we were delivering rather presentations about various immigration programs for Canada. Today, we want to do it differently. We're getting back to the roots, of course, but the way it will be different, we will, of course, run a presentation, but then I want to dedicate a large proportion of this webinar to answering your questions. So those questions you're asking in this chat section, I want to address them live while talking to you. Of course, it's humanly not possible to address all of them. It's a few hundred of you up in here right now, but still, I would try my very best. I hope it will be helpful. And most importantly, I'm really looking forward to do these webinars and run these webinars on a regular basis. So we will be able to communicate with each other fairly often. Now, going forward for this webinar today, we will be talking about pandemic. Unfortunately, it affects all of us. And speaking about pandemic, I just want to give you a brief understanding on what the opportunities are, where to look for, what to do during this COVID-19, because it affects literally every country in the world. Now, while I would be running this presentation, it's not really humanly possible for me to speak, to look at the chat, to read your questions and address those questions at the same time. If there's anything on the chat and I kind of, get it and grasp this idea, while it relates directly to what we will have on the slide, I will try to address this question. If not, I would actually get back to this question later on when we have time for questions and answers. And I promise you, I will be dedicating a large chunk of this webinars to these questions and answers. We'll see how it actually goes. And of course, I do not forget about my promises of running forward and getting forward with the pro bono. So every single one of you participating today will have an equal opportunity of one pro bono case, of running this lucky draw for one pro bono case. Now, going forward with our slides, I really don't want to stop in here. I don't really think that we would need to be reintroduced. I'm pretty sure that 99% of you know us already, that 99% of you know who I am, who our team are, right? Like how we work, what we do. We are pretty public when it comes down, especially to Canadian Immigration Channel, our Facebook, and so on. So I just don't want to stop in here and brag around sort of on this story. Speaking about the subject of the webinar today, right? What to do and how to proceed further if we are stuck in this COVID situation, right? We're all in this together and we're looking for various opportunities. And I do have kind of two separate opinions here, if you will, right? Some of the applicants are saying like, look, nothing is working. It's not going forward, right? It's not moving on. And we just have to wait. We have to wait for all this to stop, for all this to finally end, and then later on resume our immigration aspirations, right? Go forward with this later on. The other side of a story is to go ahead and to grasp every single opportunity which is on the table right now. And I personally believe that this coronavirus, it does not really stop immigration. It kind of reshapes it in many aspects. It helps you to understand immigration a bit better. But all in all, when it comes down to immigration opportunities, there are some which have faded away slowly or went off for quite a bit because of the situation with the border closing. At the same time, there are various opportunities which are emerged during this COVID simply because there is need for certain occupations, there is certain need for uh, provincial nominees. There is certain need for people who have experience working in Canada, and we will be talking about those specifically. Now, for those of you who are planning to study in Canada before we plunge anywhere deeper, I would strongly recommend you guys to reshape and reconsider your strategy, if you will. Because for you guys, for those of you who are going for studies, it is quite unpredictable. I don't really believe that these temporary measures with online studies, with this distant learning, which is supposed to be transformed later on into actual studies, will work out in the nearest future and will work out to the benefit of those of you who are planning to study in Canada and later on immigrate. It's not a grim prediction, if you will. It's just a rather a statistical understanding of the situation where it looks like we will be in this COVID for quite a while. And instead of trying to chase this unpredictable situation with studies, it might be a good idea to reconsider your options and look for plan B for immigration from home. Now, speaking about what's going on right now and how this COVID actually works, first and foremost, surprisingly for many of you, COVID actually created a quite unprecedented circumstances. At the one side of the story, we have a situation where borders are closed, where international students who do not have study visas are not actually able to come to Canada yet, where lots and lots of people with the temporary visas are not able to come in, where lots of aspiring applicants with quite a good score in express entry are not able to be processed under federal skilled worker program, and it looks like it's not working, right? At the same time, many new provincial programs are opening, and overall immigration numbers are on increase, which is again quite surprising. But that reflects the understanding of Canada of this immigration opportunity, of this immigration pathway, if you will, where our country is heading to, where we believe that immigrants are the ones who will be helping us to reshape our economy after COVID. You, as prospective immigrants, are those people who will be helping us to rebuild the country and restore its economy after COVID. Because, well, it would be foolish to say that there is at least any country in the world which is not suffering, which is not affected by COVID. And immigration numbers and immigration quotas are actually on the increase right now. At the same time, yes, when it comes down to some immigration programs, many of you will have to realign your plans and look at them differently. So, speaking about those plans and opportunities which are on the table, let me just briefly run through them for you so that you would look at where to head to, what to look for, and how to understand plan B, C, and D, and so on if you're looking to immigrate to Canada. Now, first and foremost, I would strongly recommend many of you who are looking to come to Canada and are looking to come as professionals to focus more on provincial programs rather than maybe pilots. I would say priority right now will be provincial nominee programs simply because provinces are trying to chase an opportunity. Many of them are doing it quite openly when they are taking applicants who are not able to pass through express entry stream and handpicking these applicants. Remember what Alberta has been doing, Nova Scotia has been doing, applicants New Brunswick was selecting for, right? Applicants Ontario is selecting for, and that's this open hunt, if you will, for internationally trained talent. So provincial nominee programs are the priority number one, depending on your NOC code and depending rather on your profile, because situation with NOC code might be a bit flexible, considering what you were doing, how you were working, and so on. But when it comes down to your profile, right, depending on how good, bad it is, that will determine your chances to be selected by provincial nominee programs. It is all highly individual, and if you're looking to assess your chances, mostly welcome. I would leave a link in here later on so that if you want us to help you out to understand where to head to, or if you want an individual consultation, we will be able to sit together and just discuss which provincial programs today might be working for you. But speaking about PNPs, that is the priority number one. Second one would be the pilot programs. If you've been following quite recently what was happening with the pilot programs, it went from the ugly situation where many of them were completely closed, shut up and shut off, if you will, for a while, to the point where federal government has recently started their first steps towards reopening and opening municipal pilot, where the rural pilot, especially in the northern Ontario, is taking its shape and goes forward, where Atlantic pilot slowly, very slowly right now, tries to catch up and get back on track. So pilots are still here. There are plans for other pilots to come in. There are plans for other pilot programs to be reopened and open soon, but we will be following on those on YouTube. I would say priority number one would be PNPs. Priority number two, of course, pilots. Again, and these two, they're going very, very close to each other, just depending on how situation would evolve. Next thing, right, going forward with the opportunities for business immigration. And speaking about business immigration, if you are following our videos on the channel recently, I was talking about the opportunity to go for an owner-operator pathway. The only reason for it is that owner operators, those of you who will be coming under this pathway, you are the heroes. You are the people who will be helping us to get our economy back. You are the people who will be creating additional workplaces, right? Requirements for this owner operator, they're not shaped the same way as the requirements for provincial programs for entrepreneurs, right? Financial threshold is much, much lower. And when it comes down to the situation where we are going forward with this business opportunity, with this owner operator pathway, if you will, it is quite valid, it's quite in here, and demand for it is on the rise. Before coronavirus, if you remember, we were talking about the previous Destination Canada event. On that event, immigration authorities were openly promoting this owner-operator pathway, which is quite unprecedented, but tells you that, look, Canada needs entrepreneurs, Canada needs people who will be able to come in, and that's another opportunity. By the way, for those of you who are working with funds, if you will, and good with numbers, it's not that difficult to estimate that in some circumstances, an owner-operator could be cheaper than going forward for studies in Canada. Of course, it's highly individual and depends on what kind of business you are doing, in which industry you're in, but there are multiple opportunities which will be cheaper than going forward and chasing the story with studies in Canada, for example. Well, last but not least, when it comes down to express entry, many of you were asking us what will happen in the future, how to predict express entry score, and what will actually be the result of the recent situation with United States, where U.S. is banning multiple immigrants and prospective temporary workers. So these people will inevitably turn their attention towards Canada, and Canada is looking at it with a very, very welcoming smile and is seeking for these people to come in. At the one stage, it might create and will inevitably create a situation where you will be, our listeners right now, you will be competing with these people, and you will be competing for this seat in express entry if you're applying for federal skilled worker program. But at the same time, these people will create additional quotas for provincial programs, because provinces are looking to grasp the best talent, and that's good news for you, right? Because provinces, if you follow this quite recently, provinces are not actually going along very well with federal government when it comes down to the situation with immigration. Many provinces, they may request in the beginning their quota for the number of immigrants, but in fact they may flexibly increase this quota if they see that these immigrants are contributing successfully for economical development of the province. In other words, this situation with the influx of potential immigrants from the U.S., legal immigrants of course, might create a situation where provincial nominee programs will be creating additional workplaces and additional places and seats for applicants who might successfully come to Canada. So for you, it is another opportunity and another chance. Now, just briefly, for those of you who are not following the news, what is happening in Canada and where we're going to, because there are controversial news, if you will, controversial information, and every media resource, depending on who they're following with, right, and who is paying them out of their pocket, is delivering a different story, if you will, or following the different pathway. All in all, we are finally, knock, 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 on a steady decline with a number of cases. We're not completely out of the woods yet, but we're still on the decline, and that's great news because finally we can breathe. At least those of us who are in the country are finally feeling ourselves, if you will, much, much safer than we were in the very first days. The average numbers we have overall for the country are somewhat close to 300 per day, which is nothing compared to many countries which are affected by COVID, but still that's quite a lot in the eyes of federal authorities, who believe that it's a bit too early to reopen the borders. Now, considering that we are on a steady decline, we might probably start to think about reopening the borders somewhat close to September. For those of you who are looking to come here for studies, it might be good news, but again, like, I'm really not sure how it will play out. I believe that it might be actually determined by the country where you're coming from, how your country was affected or not really affected by it. Now, speaking about travels to Canada, you still can come here under different circumstances, depending on whether or not you have relatives in Canada, whether or not it is an essential travel for you. Overall, I would say it's not a smart idea right now to apply for a temporary visa. So those of you who are coming to come to Canada temporarily as a student, as a visitor, for example, it's not a good idea to apply right now. Not necessarily your case will be refused, but most likely it would be put on hold, and God knows how long this hold will be in place. Now, if you don't want to be in a pool of people who are just waiting for something, right, might be a good idea to postpone your temporary visa application. I'm not speaking about immigration, right? When it comes down to immigration, everything is on the right track, and immigration is working full steam ahead. So when it comes down to professional immigration specifically, everything is more or less fine. The only exception is federal skilled worker program under direct express entry stream without provincial support. There is still a bit of a question mark on it, but I believe that this should be reopening fairly soon as well. Now, with the Canadian labor market, because I hear this story from time to time, people asking me, like, look, how Canada is affected, what's going on the labor market? Are you guys actually suffering? Because the number of people unemployed is huge. We hear it in the news. Well, let's put it this way. When it comes down to the number of unemployed people in Canada, these people were mostly temporarily laid off. Yes, of course, there are those who were affected more than the others. There are people who were permanently laid off because, say, a hotel they were working in was closed. I mean, who in the sober mind would be working in a hotel or going to a hotel right now? There are people who were seriously affected by the situation in hospitality, in food industry. But even in those industries, we see the very, very steady comeback, people being rehired, people are returning back to work slowly but steadily. I don't hear many news about these restaurants closing every single day because they cannot cope up with the rent and so on. So it looks like the peak is over right now and we're getting back on track. Now, why it is important? Because many of applicants or prospective applicants were sort of crying and panicking, saying, hey, you know what? It's kind of weird. Like, I mean, why would Canada need immigrants while Canadians don't have jobs or losing jobs? So this loss of jobs is, of course, temporarily. It does not mean that people have lost their jobs and they will not be able to find anything. Speaking about, like, for example, myself and my own friends, I don't have anyone, I can literally swear that, I do not have anyone who lost their job entirely and completely, or rather, I would say, lost their income of more than, I don't know, 30, maybe 35%, right? I know people who can't stop work, who can't work for quite a while, but at the same time, I know these people have been rehired somewhere else. I know them have been able to find a temporary job and so on. So they're all working and everything is stable. Everything is pretty much the same. So we are still here and everything's all right. Now, with respect to safety measures are in place, and those of you who are looking to come to Canada, well, you have to be prepared to sit in quarantine for at least a couple of weeks. And let me share here the story of a couple of my clients who came here quite recently. They landed in Ontario one after another, so it's two separate families, and I didn't know it. And they just told me, because we met after quarantine, we were talking and they were sharing their experience. All in all, they told me that they were double and triple checked. So there were calls from the federal authorities, there were calls from the local healthcare authorities checking out what they're eating, how they're drinking, how they can get fresh air, whether or not they're going outside. They were asking different family members to call them for the phone to check out that these people are actually complying with quarantine requirements. So if you're coming to Canada, be prepared to physically sit and quarantine yourself for a couple of weeks. Now, overall safety level in Canada is traditionally quite high. It, of course, applies to healthcare as well. I don't really think that any of you coming to Canada right now would be severely affected. There were comments on YouTube asking me whether it's safe to travel to Canada right now, even as an immigrant, if I can do this, how can I go? Because, I'm kind of scared. I'm afraid that I will contract this COVID-19. I believe your chances of contracting it anywhere in the world is much higher right now than in Canada. But despite everything that's been said, be safe and make sure that you comply with the rational requirements for or measures of safety. Now, briefly, let's go through this post-COVID immigration outlook and how it may actually work in the future, where we're going to, and what to expect after restrictions are lifted, because that applies to the very first slide when we were talking about the story, whether to act now and go ahead and try to apply now, or rather, to sit at home and wait for the situation to clear out. Now, speaking about this, prediction for express entry, my take is that once it opens fully again, express entry score should skyrocket. I'm sorry if these news are quite devastating for somebody. I hate to be a party pooper, but I have to, because that is the reality. Just speaking about the statistics, just speaking about the number of people who have applied, it looks like the score of express entry after it reopens and starts taking applicants with federal skilled worker, I would say that it should be going and bumping up to 470 plus, simply because there is this critical mass of people with the highest score. Now, it does not necessarily mean that your chances for immigration will be vanished or go away, right? We spoke before about provincial opportunities. We spoke before about pilots, and gradually, before federal government decides to reopen federal skilled worker program, these pilots, these PNPs will be taking more and more successful applicants. So for those of you who are looking to come to Canada, I would say that the greatest opportunity to do so, at least to create your application and try to apply, is right now. It's not tomorrow, it's not the day after, simply because, again, like, just imagine that you will be competing with a number of people who are coming from the US, who are coming from here and there, right? Those people who are recently denied by Trump, well, these people will inevitably be looking at Canada, and your opportunity, your golden chance is right now to try to come to Canada using either one of the provincial streams, or going forward with the pilots, or going forward with the owner operator. I understand that it's very generic for some of you, because it's all highly individual when it comes down to particular case, which way to go, which provincial program to go, how to address concerns of officers when it comes down to this owner-operator pathway. And I would sincerely welcome you if you would like to speak in during this individual consultation, or would like us to take your case and lead it forward, for example, for an owner-operator. Mostly welcome. We will be glad to help you out. Now, we're going forward for the finishing part, for the last part of this official section, if you will, of our webinar where we are showing you the presentation. I promised you I will not spend much of your time on the boring slides. I personally hate slides, so when it comes down to presentation, I'm typically looking forward for the live connection and for the live interaction. So just quickly to remind many of you, if you're looking for us to help you out with a case, if you would like us to help you out with your immigration, click on the link cictv.ca/go. Just type it in your browser, and we will be glad to help you out to assess your chances for successful immigration to Canada. Remember, right now it's like a sort of a bag with different colorful stones, and it's always a bit unpredictable which one you will be able to pull out. So you have to try different ones before you get the right number. So the same applies with PNPs. You may start today hoping for Saskatchewan. Tomorrow Alberta plays out. The day after tomorrow, you pass through Ontario francophone extreme. So it's always the story how soon you're actually able to go forward, how fast you're able to react, how fast you're able to register yourself for different events. And I strongly recommend you to, of course, subscribe for our channel and look for the new videos, especially the recent ones when we're talking about, for example, Intact Career Expo. It's not the only job fair, it's not the only opportunity. So make sure that you follow and make sure that you get this information, as much of this information as soon as possible, because the speed, the space of your reaction might be the golden ticket for your success. Now, we are getting to your questions and answers, and here's what I would do at this stage, because there is many of you, and practically, of course, I will not be able to address all of the questions. My apologies for it in advance, but what I will do, I will try to read them like one by one and just go through them one by one, trying to address them. Those questions which would be somehow left unanswered, feel free to send us an email, feel free to fill up the assessment form, and we will be in touch with you. I don't want to leave anything unanswered or unaddressed. Now, for the lucky draw, of course, we would leave it to the very, very end. I just want to make sure that we stay connected together with you. And let me do it this way right now. So yes, we're sitting together. I would be able to read your questions, address your questions, and help you out to have them answered, if you will. Hopefully it would work as a bridge, as this connection between both of us, right? So you're sitting at the other side of a planet, maybe close to us, maybe not, right? We're right here, and we will be able to discuss your situation. Now, speaking of the programs, assessment form filled. Thank you so much. You're 38, you're IT professional. What are the chances of getting PR? Nilesh. And I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Well, with the NOC 2171, depending on, of course, your profile, it's very hard to say without seeing it, but I would say for an IT professional with 2171, my very first thing which pops up in my mind would be Alberta, because if you remember, we were talking about Alberta, I think a couple of months ago, when we mentioned which NOC codes are traditionally in demand by Alberta, which ones are pulled out and invited by Alberta. 2171 is one of those. Another opportunity which I would probably think of would be going forward with Ontario, if your score in IELTS is quite high, and maybe Ontario would be the right pathway for you. If not Ontario, I would also probably consider going forward with BC Tech Pilot, because employers in British Columbia are getting back on track, and I hear more and more stories. In fact, I got 2 clients already who tentatively, fingers crossed for them, got job offers under BC Tech Pilot. And mind those of you who don't know it yet, BC Tech Pilot has renewed its quota and restarted its work quite recently. So BC Tech Pilot is extended for 1 more year till June 1st, 2021. So that's your golden chance to go for that one as well. Please talk about AAPP programs and which NOCs are needed in there. Well, there's no one specific NOC in there, and I would say that for Atlantic right now, while Atlantic is getting back from this COVID-19, everything would probably go except maybe for hospitality and food industry, simply because this industry was hit the most, simply because there aren't too many employers who are back on track right now. It's hard to imagine that restaurants will be working in its full capacity right now during COVID. So probably it's not the best chance for you to go ahead and ask for employment in Atlantic. But speaking about a situation with hospitality industry, with food industry, I would probably look at the rural pilot. Remember, I spoke before a few minutes ago about Sudbury in Northern Ontario, and when it comes to Sudbury, the city of Sudbury it successfully ran the number of invitations for applicants under the rural pilot, and that should be your first destination if you are looking to get something in industries which are affected in Atlantic or not reopened in Atlantic. How about the unskilled worker? Can we apply for this kind of job? JB. I'm not really sure, JB, what you mean by unskilled work. Like, I mean, working at a demolition on in construction. I seriously doubt that there is a need for such people. Uh, and this need is so high that Canada would need these people to be brought from outside of Canada. So I would need more clarification what you mean by unskilled work, because say, for example, if you're working as a drywall installer, it's already considered to be a skilled position. So really depends on the situation here. Now, can a second cousin sponsor you? She's a Canadian citizen and lives in Alberta. No, well, you cannot be directly sponsored by a second cousin because it's not your direct relative, it's not your mother, father, or say or your husband, but at the same time it might actually serve as a connection with Alberta. And if you'd like to discuss it further, just write us. Maybe we will be able to do something for you in this matter. But I think that there might be a chance to actually increase your chances to be selected by Alberta, provided that you have express entry profile, provided that everything is up and ready for you to go forward. What is the scope for engineers? That is one of the questions. For example, I mean, the way this question is asked is one of those which actually bother me when I start answering these questions on YouTube. When I'm reading comments, I'm like, what is the scope of whatever? What is the scope of engineers? What the heck should it actually mean? Like, are you asking about job perspectives for engineers? Well, I mean, outlook for engineers for technical occupations has traditionally been quite good, and I don't really think that COVID has affected it severely, right? Because it's fairly easy for your skills to be transferred for another soil. So whether you're an engineer in India, in South Africa, in Central America, right, or an engineer in Canada, your skills are still here. Of course, there is a question about licensing, right? But all in all, I mean, you know what you know, and you could actually apply this knowledge when you arrive to Canada. So I would say that all in all, when we speak about very, very generic engineers, scope for them should be quite good, if that was your question, if I understood it correctly. Now I need completing phone owner operator program and also Prince Edward program. Now, sorry, I didn't get your name because the chat is going up and up with a number of questions. Now, it's hard to say about this Prince Edward program because there are multiple programs in Prince Edward Island. Every single province and territory of Canada has a number of programs. If you would ask me later on which one it is, I would try to help you out. But when it comes to an owner operator, let me just quickly debrief those of you who are here who might have not heard about it. When it comes down to an owner operator, it's not a separate program which is structured in law, like, for example, federal skilled worker. Owner operator is the pathway which stems out from the fact that one of the reasons why Immigration and Refugee Protection Act was in fact created by Canada is to steam up Canadian economy. And those of you who have experience running their own business, who have managerial experience, who have managerial skills, if you will, and are looking to open business in Canada might be getting such an opportunity. It's not that difficult. In a core essence here is not your money, it's your experience. If you have this experience in one industry, in another industry, and you're looking to apply this experience later on to open a business in Canada, what you could do, you could probably incorporate a company in Canada without actually coming here physically. You can actually demonstrate your relevant work experience. You could prepare the business plan if needed with our help as well, of course. And later on, this business plan and your experience combined together with the proposed company could serve as a reason to request officers and Canadian immigration authorities for an open work, for the closed work permit, where you would be able to work in your own company. So that is your chance to start working in Canada without an official invitation from any other place, any other company besides your own company, of course, right? So in other words, you invite yourself, or rather your company in Canada invites yourself to work in here. And if everything is done properly and you have been demonstrating that your skills are crucial, your managerial skills are so important for this business, you might be getting 200 points with LMIA in order to use these points for your express entry application, which will, I believe, dramatically offset the situation with your IELTS test results, with your age, with your previous education, and so on. So that is one of the options which you could create for yourself. Now, typically, I would say that on a balance here, you got provincial programs, you got pilots, of course, you got an opportunity to study in Canada, which will probably cost you an arm and a leg, let's admit it. And you also have a chance to actually say, well, let me do it myself, right? Let me open a business in Canada, let me run this business, show it to officers, get myself 200 points for express entry, which will, of course, put me in front of the line for the next federal skilled worker draw, right? Because I will have a job offer from a Canadian company, and this job offer is supported by LMIA. Is BC Tech Pilot calling for Outlanders? That's a nice word for Utkarsh. Again, sorry if I pronounced the word incorrectly. Outlanders in this pandemic situation. BC Tech Pilot is inviting applicants from abroad as well. That is absolutely correct. I won't call them Outlanders. I would rather call them future Canadians, future permanent residents of Canada, rather than outlanders. You're not outlanders for us. You are people who will be shaping our country and helping us out to move forward. See, it's a completely different attitude compared to our southern neighbors, where somehow they got this weird look at immigrants, saying that, like, well, you guys are not welcomed in here, forgetting about the fact that the country was created by immigrants in the first place. It's completely different in Canada, right? You are not outlanders for us. You are the Canadians who are somehow not in Canada yet. Now, yes, BC Tech Pilot is inviting applicants from abroad as well, provided that you have a job offer from one of the employers under this Tech Pilot. Considering that employers are opening and reopening, considering that British Columbia is in extremely well shape right now compared to Ontario, compared to Quebec, which was severely hit by COVID-19, that might be your chance to move forward. Thank you for making me immigrate. Oh, Vijay, yes, welcome. All righty, well, what the hell are you doing on the webinar? You're supposed to actually look for a job right now in Canada, but yeah, welcome to the webinar. It's quite nice to see you. That's one of the clients we had a chance to meet in person. All right, that's quite cool to see you in here. Uh, uh, can I have a proof of fund for study permit, joint account with a family member, um, and the member's primary applicant, Shani? Yes, you can. Absolutely. I mean, as long as it's your family member, say your spouse, and your spouse is going for studies, and most of money, or a large chunk of money, or everything is in your joint account, or just in your account, yes, it could definitely be shown. What is the minimum score for, sorry, it went up. The spouse of dependent peer application work going on? Not sure that I got your question, Sruti. Are the spouse dependent PR? No, I'm not really sure I understood what you were trying to ask. If you could rephrase it for me, I would be glad to help you out. Practical assessment certification required during fill up form. How is it possible for outsider from Canada? Now, when it comes down to, it's an interesting question, by the way. Thank you for asking it. Those of you who are in construction, right? Those of you who are with this applied jobs, if you will, what you could do, you could have yourself in a situation where your occupation requires licensing, and not necessarily this licensing would be applicable and possible to get this license from outside of Canada. Speaking of which, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any chance to apply as a welder. Of Of course, there are opportunities for you to reconsider the application and look at your work experience differently as a technician, for example, not necessarily as a licensed welder. But if you still want to go as a welder, what I would recommend is to look at Federal Skilled Trades program, because once the borders are open and you can get yourself a temporary visa and take an exam in here and pass through Federal Skilled Trades program, which would allow you to either get yourself additional points in express entry and boost your score and be selected, or participate in a separate selection tailored specifically for Federal Skilled Trades. Either or would work, and if you would need help with this, feel free to drop us a line, send us an email, or fill up the assessment form. We'll be in touch for sure. What is my opinion on asylum in Canada? I don't really have an opinion on asylum in Canada. I would say that those who really need protection, who are in desperate need and cannot go anywhere else, right, who are severely oppressed, and well, these people are seeking for asylum in Canada. It's processed separately, but well, it works for those who got genuine cases. That's my opinion of asylum, if you will. Now, can I change my NOC code to legal administrative assistant? Mary, right? So the question is about changing NOC code and whether or not administrative assistant would be in higher demand than other administrative service managers. The answer is generally yes. The latest time your NOC code was on one of the external sessions of New Brunswick, which was before coronavirus. That was about 3.5 months ago. So New Brunswick was taking your NOC code. That was 1242, if I remember it correctly. And I would definitely, as long as your job duties correspond to this NOC code, I would definitely recommend you to go this pathway, of course. Are employers for Atlantic providing job offers? Yes and no. Yes, they do, but much slower than they were doing it before. That's why I said that the idea right now is, if you're looking to apply for pilots, is somehow to look at the situation slightly differently and try to, zoom it up and see what else could be done here, right? Can I go for the rural pilot as well, apart from just the Atlantic? Can I try to target municipal pilot? It's upcoming, but what could I do with this right now? Can I actually focus on territorial and regional pilots, for example, the ones in Ontario? What would be the requirements in there, and how can I address the needs of those communities? Last but not least, can I just align my skills to what is required by the city of Morden in Manitoba? Because that was the first, if you will, territorial or local municipal pilot which was created in Manitoba. Maybe I could go there as well, because it's still open, right? Rather than just focusing on Atlantic. Because, at some point there is a decline in the number of invitations for Atlantic, but at the same time, rural pilot is still there. It's up. When it comes down to other pilots, they are up as well, including Yukon pilots. So it's still there on the table. Just get this broader picture. Look at it. Any possibility of sales profile getting invites from PNPs? RJ, depends on what kind of sales profile it is, because if it's a technical sales professional, there might be something for you. Again, have to discuss it individually. It's very hard to say, but welcome either on consultation or come to us, send us an email. We'll help you out. How about my how about my last job was about 10 years ago? Do you still have a chance to apply? You're doing a volunteer job right now. Now, if that was more than 10 years ago, I would rather start, creating work experience right now, because you have to have at least, at the very minimum, at least 1 year of work experience in the last 10 years. So if it was beyond that period, I would say that the right pathway right now would be at least getting 1 year of work experience before applying. How to get online jobs in Canada? Well, I'm not really sure about online jobs and what specifically you mean by this. I would rather, if you will, address the question slightly differently: how to get a job in Canada online. Now, one of the options is to go for Intech Career Expo, and I would strongly recommend all of you, if you haven't done it yet, register for it as soon as possible. Now, Registration is free. Intech Career Expo by itself will take place in September. Registering right now is mandatory simply because there are lots of small employer driven online events which may allow you to connect with those employers, which may allow you to move forward, right, and get this opportunity. Apart from those, there are other events which are taking place from time to time, and we try to notify our clients and our subscribers for it. Our clients in the first priority, subscribers in the second one. There are sometimes opportunities for those of you who are looking to immigrate to Canada where employers are coming to us and asking us to provide them with a number of resumes so that they may be able to choose somebody. Might there be some successful applicant out of those? And we typically are notifying our clients first and then going forward with those. If there are none among the pool of the clients, we will of course put this online on YouTube. But I hope it would address your question. When will Atlantic pilots start to go outside? Like, what do you mean? When will Atlantic? If that was a question, oh, sorry, that was a question, I guess, for Alberta, right? Because sorry, I didn't get your name. It went up. When will Alberta start taking people from outside of Canada? About a week and a half ago, and before that, few days ago, and before that, a few days, and before that, a few days. Like, I mean, when it comes down to Alberta, yeah, Alberta was taking people from abroad, right? I'm not really sure why this question rises. Now, at the same time, we have to be absolutely open here that Alberta right now is reviewing its immigration program, but not in a sense where it will be reshaped completely. What has been said is that Alberta is focusing primarily on people who are living in the province, and that's what Alberta is supposed to do. And they're saying that they may decrease, not dramatically, but slightly, by 20, maybe by 30%, decrease the number of applicants they are inviting. But considering the number of selections which were taken by Alberta in the recent few weeks during coronavirus, I think it's inevitably that they should have decreased the numbers, because I believe that their quota is almost already over. So saying that, we will take slightly less, guys, you already took a lot. So not really sure. Um, um, uh, Now, can you tell something about mechanical engineering demand in water and water master treatment sector? Not really sure. It's highly specific about this master treatment, and I'm not a huge professional in it, so a bit too hard. If you want me to just to dig a little bit deeper into this, feel free to drop us a line, and I will try to look into this, but just can't say right now. Um, Now, how the points decided between 50 and 200? Is it only dependent on NOC or case to case? I guess this question applies to an owner operator and my previous speech about it. And let me be very open in here. I'm still adamant to what I said in the previous video when I answered questions about an owner operator. Provided that your immigration representative, your legal representative who's been working with you and this owner operator has not messed up completely, you should be getting 200 points, because the whole idea of this owner operator, the way it was created and structured, is all about uh, getting this 200 points, right? Because you are the person who is standing at the steering wheel of this business. So you're supposed to be at the NOC code 00. So that's where you are, and that's what this owner operator is about. If you're getting 50 points, either that was predominantly agreed between you and your legal representative, say, for example, because you don't need an extra work, you don't need those 200 points, or that something's wrong has been done, your case was not properly explained to officers, that's why you just got only 50. Intag does not entertain non-Canadian. That's not true. Intag Career Expo, well, I'm not really sure what it means, it does not entertain. Intag Career Expo openly says that they're welcoming applicants from abroad. You either have to have a Canadian work permit or be in Canada, of course, or you have to have express entry, right? So as a Canadian, you cannot possibly have express entry because you're already in the country. So it does actually, if you will, entertain uh, non-Canadians in this sense. Where to register for online jobs from Canada? Again, I think I already answered this a bit. I'm not really sure what you mean by online jobs. but everything's been said before about Intech, everything's been said about other job fairs. Um, well, we post links more or less regularly on those, and if you're looking to try to get yourself a job, yeah, we will be able to go forward with this. I won't talk about connection with employers. Sorry. Um, it's a good way to be assessed with Atlantic. Please talk about this. I think we spoke about it before. What about funds and economical status? Applying to immigrate to Canada, having low economical status means that I have low chances of being approved. Amir, I'm not sure what you mean by this low economical status, but for almost any immigration program in Canada, you have to demonstrate that you got enough funds to settle in the country. Reason being is very simple. Canada wants to make sure that you will not come in here, right, and start begging for help and assistance from immigration authorities. So when it comes down to the situation where you're immigrating as a skilled worker with the support of Canadian employer, you do not necessarily have to demonstrate these funds. When it comes down to pilot programs, which imply that you have a job offer, either the requirements are lower or significantly lower with a proof of funds. So it's, say, a mere few $1,000s, which is typically quite doable for many applicants from abroad. I hope it will help to address your question. Now, how much is the process for temporary work permit and so on? Well, it depends on where you are and where you're applying from. So it's a bit challenging to say without knowing where you're from. People who are experiencing travel and tourism. Well, RT, I would say RT that yeah, crying smiles. I know it's challenging. It's challenging everywhere in the world, right? So look, I do have passion and compassion for people in tourism industry. I got friends who are affected by it, but let's call it what it is. Right now, tourism industry is not in the best shape, but I think that we will be able to see this backlash, if you will, return back to normal fairly soon, especially inside the country. So I think that hospitality should be getting back on track. Now, I promised you to get back with this lucky draw, if you will. We have still one spot for pro bono case. Whoever sends an email to us with a promo code Canada Day as a one word, I would ask one of our moderators and assistants to write it down in capitals, like Canada Day. Send us an email within the next hour. That's very important because this way we would know that you came directly from the webinar. It's not people who are watching the recording. And we will be conducting one lucky draw and we will announce who was the winner. We will send an email to him or her. And for this person, we will be working on the case completely and entirely free of charge. Now, what I would do next here is I would get back like this, yeah, so you could still see me but see this slide as well. And because I see that people were asking for our contacts, people were asking like how to get in touch with us. If you are looking for us to assess your chances for immigration, the link is here, cictv.ca/go, and we will be able to get in touch with you. We will be able to reply you back and get additional information if needed to assess your profile so that we are able to assist you further on. Now, speaking of going further with webinars, because we're getting back to the conclusion and last part of the webinar. Now, for the future, as I said, I really hope, and I'm quite adamant about it, to run these webinars on a more or less regular basis. It's not really about videos on YouTube anymore. It is all about being connected with you. I know there are many questions, and I'm feeling really bad that I'm not able to address all of them right now. But if you still got questions and concerns, feel free to send us an email. Fill up this registration link and go ahead with that. But what I want to do with this webinar is I want to run them on a fairly regular basis where we will be able to connect on the channel and answer your questions and run these question answer sections fairly often and know each other a bit better. I hope to help you out to relocate to Canada. That was the whole idea of creating this channel in the very first place, and we're going forward, and I hope achieving this aim successfully for many applicants. What we would do with further webinars, click on like, click on subscribe. click on notification button to receive notifications about our further videos. That would help us to understand how many of you are here, that you're listening, that you're watching. And feel free to leave your comment in the comment section below the video, because that would help us to understand what to include in further webinars, what kind of subjects should be there, how to address your questions better, how to help you out further, and how to help you out to come to Canada. Share it, of course, with your friends, peers, colleagues, whoever. And on this note, I would have to say goodbye, not farewell. I hope to see you fairly soon in the next webinars. We will be conducting these webinars more often than not. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming in. I know it's not the most convenient time for many of you, but again, come here often. We'll establish this connection on a regular basis, and I hope to talk to many of you as often as possible and see you in Canada as well. On this note, thank you so much and goodbye.